Hi, I'm Trev Hutchings, and this is how to quickly edit MIDI velocity in Cakewalk. Here I've got a MIDI track, and on this MIDI track I've got a drum pattern. And if I double click on the MIDI drum pattern, the MIDI editor pane opens at the bottom of the screen. And at the bottom of the MIDI editor pane is this section where it shows the velocities of the notes. And if you can't see the velocity section, it's probably because it's closed. So what you need to do is move the mouse cursor to the bottom of the pane until the mouse turns into this double-headed arrow, and then press on the mouse cursor and drag up. Now the first thing that you can do in the velocity section is you can actually draw velocities. So if I move the mouse into the velocity section, you'll see the mouse has now turned into this pencil shape. And if I press down on the mouse and then drag down the screen, I can reduce the volume of the notes. And when I drag up the screen, I increase the volume of the notes. And here I've created this velocity curve, and it sounds like this. Now using the same technique, you can create a fade in or a fade out. And I would always suggest starting at the top of the fade and then work your way down to the bottom of the fade. So if I move to the end of the second bar, then put the mouse cursor just above the velocity lines, then I'm going to press on the mouse cursor and drag left and drag down the screen to create a fade in. And if I don't like the fade in, I can just draw again and change it. And now my fade in sounds like this. Now the next thing you can do is you can actually select a specific note type. So here I can select all the snare drum notes and just change the velocity of the snare drum notes. And to do that, I just need to click on the keyboard area on the key that represents the snare drum row. And now you'll see that all the snare drum notes have gone a darker colour. Now the only snare velocity line that you can see at the moment is this one here. And this is because the velocity lines are stacked one in front of the other. And the highest note I've got here is the hi-hats. So they're stacked in front of the snare. But I do have this one that is on its own. And you'll see that the velocity line is this darker colour. And if I move the mouse cursor to the top of that velocity line, it'll change into this double-headed arrow. And now I can drag up to increase the velocity of the snare notes, or I can drag down to reduce the velocity of the snare notes. And now that I've adjusted the velocity of one of the snare notes, you can see that all the snare note velocity lines have appeared in this darker brown. And now with this adjustment, it sounds like this. Now I also want to adjust the volume of the hi-hat notes, but I want to do this for both the closed hi-hat and the open hi-hat notes. And I can do this by first selecting the closed hi-hat notes, and then if I press the Shift key on my keyboard, I can then select the open hi-hat as well. And now you'll see that both rows are this dark brown. And the velocity lines for the hi-hats have also turned this dark brown as well. So now I can just select one of them. So if I drag the mouse to the top of one of these velocity lines, so it turns into a double-headed arrow, I can drag up or down to change the velocity of the hi-hat. So in this case, I'm going to drag it slightly higher. And now my beat sounds like this. Now there's one last thing that I want to show you here, and it's in the bottom left hand corner of the Midi editor screen, and it's called Transform. And if you click on Transform, you'll see this area has now appeared in the velocity line section that is a blue zone. And now you can edit just the notes in the blue zone. And if you move the mouse cursor to the beginning of the blue zone, so it turns into a double-headed arrow, you can drag left or right to increase the length of the blue zone. So now I've moved it to start at the beginning of bar 3. And you can do the same at the end of the blue zone as well. And here I'll drag it to the end of bar 4. Now to adjust the velocity level of all these notes, click on the center dot at the top of the blue zone. And then drag down the screen. Or to increase them, drag up the screen. And now that I've reduced the velocity of this section, this is what it sounds like. Now that was quite a sharp change from the higher velocity down to the lower velocity section, but there's something else you can also do here. And at the front of the blue zone is this icon, which is currently a square. And if I put the mouse cursor over it, you'll see it says toggle soft mode. And if I click on the square, you'll see that the blue zone now has curved edges to the blue zone. And this will effectively add a fade in and fade out to that zone. So if I now reduce the volume of this zone again, the beginning and end of this zone will be faded in and faded out. So you get a much smoother transition from the high velocity section before and after the blue zone. And it sounds like this. and when you're finished, click on Transform again to turn off the blue zone. If you enjoyed this video, do give us a thumbs up and click on that subscribe button. Cheers!